Hey, happy Shabbat. Happy weekend. We are mourning here in the blues. Chelsea went down the hard way. It's bleeding in the land of the blues in football. Chelsea, how comes? Two red cards back-to-back games. What a disaster, catastrophe, shambolic, Brits will say. What's going on in that part of sport? Goodness me, I woke up to that mayhem. Well, that's why we wake up for sports. This man woke up. I'm still recovering from that shambolic display of the blues. What was Chiloba? This is the defender thinking. Mistakes after mistakes in the back line, my friend. Whoa. Blues. Well, that's what happens. It must happen to somebody. And we lost. I don't want to hear people text me about what happened with the Chelsea. I'm receiving a friend telling me that I need to burn my jersey. Hey man, that's not nice. Why am I burning my jersey? Did you guys see the Somali fans disintegrating or defecating on Kenyan flags? What's up with that? Why'd we do that? I'm not burning my jersey. I'm not burning the flag. You can lose, but you don't have to be outrageous. Losing is part of the norm of sports. There's a loser and a winner. Take the loss. Go clean up your mess. Hopefully you come back a better player, a better human being. Talking of better human beings in Tukuriada, my subscriber, let me tell you something. I'm just trying to give you a perspective every time, and I hope I'm doing a good job. If I am, let me know. Thumbs up, man. Give me a thumbs up. I enjoy that thumb going up. I mean, it's going down. It's going down. It's like a loss and a win. I'll take it. I'll enjoy having a conversation wherever it takes us. And so last episode, I posted something about Kenya demise, mostly specifically on the gender of men. And I'm not pitting this conversation between genders. I think it's unfair to compare women's success to men's success. It's always unfair. There are two different parallels. They are in the same championship in Tokyo, but they are different genders, so it's never good to compare accomplishments. If Faith is running as great as she is, she's running as great as she is. You don't have to compare Faith's accomplishment to Timothy Cheruiyot's accomplishment. It doesn't make sense. When we do that, I don't think we are being honest in our deciphering of the results and the outcomes. But I'm very glad a little bit here that the national coach of Kenya, Julius Kirwa, seems to be listening to this YouTube channel. Tukuriada, Julius, just listen to me. I give you something to think about, but maybe it was ahead anyway. But I was glad to hear that they've admitted to a concern. There's a crisis. There's a production diminishing in men as far as championships are concerned. And I like what he said initially. I read something in the local newspaper, The Star, that says something to this effect that the national athletics coach, Julius Kiro, admitted the disparity, explaining that women's had more representation due to wildcards from their previous dominance. And that's not how you really analyze look at the crisis besetting men in the last championship. You don't just attribute that to the wildcards that Faith Kipyegon and Beatrice are the wild card, and they were the defending champions, and so they had an advantage. That is a cheap shot. That's what I was saying. Never compare the two genders in the championship. To even say that they had Mary Moraa, Faith Kipyegon, and Beatrice Chebet, and so they had more representation. That's why they were better in the medal count. Kirwa, that is not how you look at it. Let me just give you how you look at it. You look at it from what I just gave you in the early episode, that you had more men representation. You had almost 40 men compared to 25 women. So that wildcard thinking is not being honest. Being honest is saying that men are struggling in the championship. He continues though, which I kind of find that is kind of more open to interrogating the subject of why. I like the fact that he is concerned about the fact that he says we need to review the selection criteria in men's ranks, especially in the 5,000 and 10,000. He continues, I quote this, we must go back to the drawing board to reclaim the selection criteria for the two categories, and especially the men's cadre. Well, it's a lot of good things they say here, but let me see how they follow up. And then I think there's one thing he says that was very pivotal for me. I thought he really went into where the problem is. He says that we do not have many 10,000 races in the Diamond League. Okay, and athletes opt for the road races instead, which should be the case. Which should not be the case, he says. He lamented. He's kind of whining. I don't think he's really. I think let me say something about officials in general. Don't scapegoat the issue. Don't point to something else. Point to what can you do as a coach. You are the coach of the national team. May I paraphrase something here from the get-go here that I want to go into maybe challenging Kenya athletic fraternity and the nation and the country of Kenya into maybe rebooting how America and the leadership and the red states have gone into MAGA. And I'm not using that MAGA of the leadership of this country to say something. I'm just saying maybe we can use the MAGA by saying making athletics golden again. Oh, wow. Hey, I went MAGA, but I went golden. I didn't say great because we have golden years behind us in terms of men in performing on World Championship. You guys have very nostalgic and romantic realization that a few years ago, when it came to steeplechase, the world was like 1, 2, 3 for Kenya. It was. It was just as obvious in the first 2 laps. That gap has closed. That gap is not there anymore. In fact, that gap is in favor of non-Kenyans. So let me go back to Kirwa after saying the MAGA of making athletics golden again, if I may use that word. To do that in Kenya for me, going to the drawing board is a good thing, as the coach is suggesting. But he has to suggest it in a radical manner. Because I think I read something here that was very interesting. Let me tell you something. I read a lot. And I think there's a Let's Run website that was had a very interesting article, very fascinating. I'll share with you maybe the 5 things they talked about. There's an author who wrote something of why, the reasons he thinks that there's been a decline in championship medaling from the non-African or African athletes. And he gave a very analytical, very data-based information, which was very glaring to me, because from 2022, he talks about Jacob winning where Africans used to win the 5K, all the way to this year where you have a French winning the 10K, Gracia, and you have Hoka winning the 5K, and you have Beamish winning the 3,000 meters. I don't think that has ever happened in a championship at all, not that I remember of. Then he explains why, and I like what he talks about, which I think Kira could use this to realize that the problem with Kenya, the problem why they are struggling to live in the golden eras, the idea of recapturing those days, those championship era where Kenyans were brilliant in some events, not all events, mostly the steeplechase, the 5K, the 10K. I think this guy has a better perspective, a better analysis. He talks of the fact that I think if you remember Kenya, why they were great or why they've been great is the altitude training. It is the natural doping. You know, if you think of Kenyan's athletes, they don't have to buy dope, you know, the drug that enhances their capacity or their abilities to do well. They just live there. So it was natural. But that has changed over the years. And it started changing, if I remember correctly, late 90s. People like Bob Kennedy, they went to Kenya, trained with Kenyans. They started even eavesdropping, spying on what Kenyans do. And Kenyans were very much asleep. They fell asleep when those things were happening. because people started to ask questions. People are curious why Kenyans were doing very well. They were envying them at the same time they were spying on them. And Kenyans were just not aware. And over the years, if you have noticed one thing about Kenyans, they always think it's the same thing that will work every time, day in, day out in the championship. The world is catching up. The world is global village. What you think you own, somebody else comes and says, no, I don't think you have monopoly. And I don't think Kenyans have done well in understanding the changing dynamics of athletics in the world. So they live in the past where they believe we're going to just run miles day in, day out, going to schools. And we're going to win all the kind of championship. We're going to do the same things we've been doing all the times. This and that and that. It doesn't work. So the first thing these guys talks about is altitude training, which Kenyans lived in that altitude. But now we have Flagstaff. We have some places in St. Maurice in France where athletes go. It's altitude like in Nairobi, Nyahururu, and Eldoret. So that is not something Kenyans can monopolize. If not, Western athletes can go to Kenya. They can afford to live in those facilities. In fact, they can do better than even Kenyans themselves because they can afford to live there and train there. That's gone out of window. The other thing that I found very interesting these guys suggest was that there's more drug testing. So Athletics Integrity Unity, AIU, and WADA seems to be weeding out cheaters, and they've done well in weeding out cheaters among Kenyans and athletes of African descent. They've been very aggressive in the last few years, very, very aggressive that even people are asking, could it be that Kenyans were even cheating in the past, but they were not caught because there was no aggression in following up and exposing and banning people who are cheating. But there's one thing I like, something he said that was very, very, I think it was sobering to listen to this guy. He says that as some have pointed out, it's quite possible that the Western athletes they are more sophisticated in their doping and better able to get away with it. I'll say this, I think I'm very honest about the abilities, the legal framework that protects athletes from the West, that sometimes they can even challenge some of these dope tests that comes their way. You can look back to some, like I think was her name, who was in the 5K, Shawhan. The first thing NBC said that she was banned for 4 years, but now she's back. It seems to, in the Western ecosystem of athletics, you can reclaim your place in the athletics if you can find time, you can find the legal channels to challenge that. And I think what's lacks in the Kenyan ecosystem is that they don't have that capacity. Most of them just seem to be deflated. They get depressed, they give up when they get banned or busted for substance abuse. And I think that could be why there's this idea or the athletes from the Western world being able to come back. The other thing I like he talks about is super shoes. You know, that was very interesting. Super shoes and the biomechanics and the efficiency that it contributes to the running of athletes from the West. They are able to use the latest technology. And parts of Kenya and parts of the landscape of Kenya athletics is that we are still raw. We believe in the raw and the organic form of running. That is catching up with us. Technology seems to be overtaking Kenyans very quick. If you remember people like Eliud Kipchoge who have embraced technology and nutrition and the Western thinking in their training, is that they are ahead of the curve. I remember when Eliud Kipchoge shoes, when Global or the Nike promoted, that thing sold in a day. So that is maybe where the Western world has closed the gap on Kenyans. The other thing that I find interesting is coaching. Let's not kid ourselves. The Africans athletes don't have the top coaches. I've mentioned a few in Kenya. It's very, very sad that we can only talk of maybe one or two. Maybe Jacinta, who has been coaching Lilian Odira, she seems to be thinking more Western and how to use nutrition and think more of how do you improve, because you can only improve so much. The world is, like I say, the gap is closing, and there's no way you think you have a monopoly. Patrick Sang stands out, the only coach right now in Kenya whom you can say that's the great coach. The problem I think we have in Kenya is we don't have top-notch coaches. We lack. We don't train them very well. I think one of the things even Kira seems to be scapegoating is because he doesn't see coaching being a problem. I don't think he said that here in his response to why men are struggling. And I think there's another issue that I think there's a boy-child issue here. Men in Kenya are struggling to understand why they're lagging behind in jobs, in success, in progress, in school, in athletics. I think there's a mental aspect to that, and that is not being addressed even as the coach is looking at it. There's one thing he said that I agree with Coach Kira, the Kenyan coach, is that he talks about the law, the attraction, the incentives in the road races and marathon, where men are chasing this dollar day in, day out. We've heard of marathon runners in Kenya who are running almost 4 marathons a year, road races back to back. If you go to road races around the world, you'll always see a Kenyan. That's a fact. They are chasing the dollar. That chasing of the dollar affects how they come to the championships. That's why they are dipping when it comes to medal, accomplishment, and winnings. So that's another issue he seems to address, the lucrative, the incentives that come with road races. And I think he even says something that was very shocking to me, that they are begging these guys to join the team to go to Tokyo. Sawe and Wanjiro just ran one of the best times this year in Berlin marathon. These guys should have been the championship, but there's more money in marathon in this, and they had committed before the championship. So they're having contracts outside their commitment for being in a Kenyan team. Can I say something? If we want to go and reclaim the MAGA of Kenya, which I call making athletics golden again in Kenya, could it be what I just said in my last episode? Rebranding, reinventing, rebooting, reclaiming the values and patriotism that has been lost for Kenyans. Kenya is struggling with the individualistic pursuit of anything. I think Kenyans are so individualistic. From the leadership, I can say this, there are very few Kenyans who believe in Kenya. And I'm not making that up. There are very few. People don't believe in the country because you can see people are pursuing their own. And if you ask an athlete to give up on $100,000 or even more in marathon to go and represent a country that doesn't care for you, you can figure that. It's not even a matter of debate. It's where you're going to go. You're going to take care of your family. You're going to take care of yourself. Your life and your career depends on this money. So people in Kenya, athletes in Kenya, are chasing the dollar, not the flag, not the patriot thinking, not the ushuja and this idea that mimi ni, whatever that is. Mimi ni, what is it? What is patriot in Kenya? Being patriotic is kuwa mzalendo. I don't think mzalendosm, kuwa mzalendo, is very high in Kenya right now because even the leaders themselves, if you see what they do to a country, the plundering, the exploitation, the idea of exporting talent to Dubai and young people to different parts of the world, and then you ask them to go to the championship and you want them to bear the flag, that's the problem. Lack of patriotism in Kenya could be another issue that this coach needs to look at. Why is it that people don't believe in Kenya anymore? It's maybe those things that they are watching within the leadership. Do they even care about the country? Another thing this guy shares is finances. And I think this is what I'm talking about. When you think of finances, the incentives, the me, you have to take care of your family first before you can take care of your community. before you can take care of a country or even care about the big picture. So I think Kenyans athletes, mostly predominantly men, who've been told they are the breadwinners, they are the patriarch, they are the man of the country. They are starting to ask those questions. Am I really that person that I've been told I am? Or I just take care of myself? And I said in my last episode that I think Kiro and the coaches and the Kenyan athletics fraternity and association need to address, for me, is the well-being of the athletes. People are becoming self-aware that if you don't care for them and they don't see you, even coming to see them in their training camps, if you don't see them treating their athletes like Botswana is doing, and Botswana right now is becoming a powerhouse when you think of 400 meters, 200 meters, they found that they can be a global force because they're investing in their athletes. People like James Kerani, they've gone to Grenada, built a stadium. They are the exceptional global ambassadors of their country. People care about them from the grassroots. Leadership of that country gives them honor and privileges that are accorded politicians in that country. They got VIP treatment. In Kenya, these athletes, the only time they get VIP is when they're coming from this championship. There's a little parade. There's a little bit of hula, hula, hula at the airports. But beyond that is silence, and sometimes silence to their own demise. And people see this. It's been a long, long history of this kind of stuff. And maybe that is the issue they need to wrestle with, to recreate what they call the MAGA. Like I keep repeating this, you want to be a golden country that you thought you were, and the gap is closing. They need to address the fundamental issues, the underlying issues, not this idea that we had more wild card women like Faith having to not to do the trials, and they are the wild card. So we had more women. They didn't have more women in the Kenyan team. No, they didn't. They just have women, to be honest with you, you can go anywhere. They are the fiber. They are the foundation of a nation. They believe in a community. They believe in there's this idea, they think beyond themselves. Men struggle with that sometimes. They struggle with selfishness, pursuing their dollar. And you have leadership. I attribute Kenya's fallout crisis to a crisis of leadership. It's not athletes. Athletes sacrifice themselves. Kirua and the coaching people within the system need to address underlying issues. It's them. They need to go back in the drawing board and address what is plaguing men, particularly in Kenya. There's a boy-child crisis in Kenya. They are lost. Honestly, they are. If you can see how they stand on that starting line. Then Wanyonyi is an exception. I'll give you that. Eliud Kipchoge is becoming an exception. These people are standing tall. They have a deeper calling. Most men in Kenya are chasing the dollar. And when you're chasing the dollar, you are not thinking of the country. The country that even when you come back, they want to tax you for what you've won in these races, instead of rewarding you for representing the country. People are turning to themselves and saying, I'll take care of myself. I don't care about this country. That is a problem in Kenya. We've gone individualistic. We've become a people of me. And when you have a people of me and you have world championship that wants you to bear the flag, it's a conflicting narrative. There are different values in Kenya. And men are particularly becoming maybe selfish, and it's just not me making it up. It's what it is. People want to take care of themselves before they can think of the country. Even including these leaders and politicians, they want to just steal for themselves, and when it comes down to it, they want you, the athlete, to get the prizes and tell them this is for the country. That's not happening. That's the problem. There's this idea that we are not a country. I think, to be honest with you, we are just a geographical phenomenon. We are so fragmented in Kenya that now it's becoming exposed. And the world, as this guy is saying, has caught up with Kenya. Kenya used to live in these whatever golden times. These people didn't know much. We were exotic. We were like, hey, here comes the Kenyan runners. They're gonna dominate 3,000. That's not happening, my friend. The French are running away with it. New Zealand are kicking away with it. And one thing you realize too in the championship is becoming tactical. And if your mind is not at peace with your country, you're like, what am I doing here? Well, did I give you something to chew on? If I did, and you watched it until this point, you can comment. If you're a Kenyan, what do you think is plaguing men in championships? Please don't compare them to women. That is never gonna work. Women are winning. They know how to do it. They are disciplined enough. And I'm proud, you should be proud of them. We cannot compare the two. But there's a problem within the man, the myth, the demystified myth of manhood in Kenya. And it is selfish for me. It is the thievery in this country. It's the plundering. And it's the idea that we are not inclusive. We are not seeing a country. We are seeing a geographical phenomenon. So for us to think of MAGA, making athletics golden again in Kenya, drawing board is not enough. Maybe we just have to just squash the whole thing and start from somewhere else, which might take a lot of work and a lot of soul searching. That was my perspective in Tukuriada, my friend. MAGA? I'm the talking of MAGA country of Kenya? Yes, MAGA. That was the take from Tukuriada. Talk to you later.